Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. We've got some unboxing to do today, a lot of just repeated stuff, but we also have something kind of interesting in this box. But I thought I would use today to talk about my April Fool's joke this year, because there are a lot of people that didn't watch far enough to realize it was just an April Fool's joke. So no, I am not getting a signature model from Gibson. That was just a whole made-up episode that was a lot of fun to do. But there is a lot of a backstory behind them, because if you went down the rabbit hole of clicking all through the links on my website, you would see a page that says, April Fools, this isn't a real project at this time, but as a wise man once said, behind every just kidding is a little bit of truth. So for today, while I unbox the Noir series again, due to popular demand that I import some more of these because these things sold out so fast, I thought I would tell you the rest of the story behind those Photoshop renderings that I used. So there's a fan of the show named Truls, something like that, T-R-U-L-S. Those letters don't really go together in English. He's a pretty young guy. He just wanted some experience doing some Photoshop because he would always build like fake dream guitars of his own. So he reached out to me one time. He's like, hey, if you ever need any Photoshop renderings done of everything, I would be happy to assist. And so naturally I obliged and I tell him, hey, how about we do something really crazy? Because the Gibson made-to-measure program is something that exists where you can take your crazy ideas and make them into reality. Keeping in mind, it has to be relatively simple. Now, the LP400 was not very simple, but I thought just maybe the Gibson Custom Shop could pull it off. So, those were actually completely rendered out with the anticipation of it being a made-to-measure program type thing where it would actually happen. And it got to the point where, yes, we were going to do it, and I submitted it to the custom shop for final approval to make sure that they could actually do it. Now, unfortunately, they tried as hard as they could, but they said, it's just a little bit too complicated. We can't get a tailpiece that says, you know, Les Paul 400 in such small production numbers. Because basically, I was just going to custom commission my own run. This wasn't something that Gibson approached me and said, hey, we want to do a signature run with you. It was something I was going to use my own money, custom order, you know, 5, 10 or so of them, and just sell them on my own. It would all be on me. So unfortunately, that whole plan kind of got shot down there. So that custom shop version where we do, you know, string through the body type stuff, I didn't even ask him about that. That was just something I was always thinking in my head. But I did want to elaborate a little bit more on that because some people saw through the joke at that point. I wasn't saying you actually string it through the output jack. That's just dumb. Like, the Les Paul Supremes actually have an enlarged jack plate. I would have likely did threaded metal inserts. That way you don't have to worry about the wood stripping out over the edges. So you just take that out and then you would see those extended ferrules like down here. That actually is a logical idea that could work. And it's just one of those quirky specs that would have been cool. But if something ever does happen of it, it's likely going to be more like the Gibson USA version. It would still be made in the custom shop, but I guarantee with all the fanciness and everything, they would likely be about 8,500 bucks. So, I mean, if something like that does interest you, I'm not gonna put the LP400 away just yet. I think I just need to talk to the made-to-measure program, see what we can actually do realistically. And when I teased, you know, a Gibson Les Paul and a Firebird, that was also another idea. I'll show you guys that one right here. I told you I wanted to blend the Firebird acoustic with a Les Paul. They said that one was too crazy too. So don't worry, we will get crazy with the Gibson made-to-measure program, but that's just kind of like a hint inside of my crazy mind as far as strange, bizarre guitars that I would have created. So that is that little shed of truth behind all the jokes that I was alluding to. But as you saw, I got another Noir Telecaster. I actually have 2 of these available, so if you are interested, they'll be on my website as well as on Reverb. And inside here, we have a different one. We'll have to see which one. Is it the Stratocaster? It looks like it. So my last Strat, I think it was like the first one to sell besides that Jazzmaster. And in case you missed that other episode of the Fender Noir series, I did a review and demo on the Jazzmaster because that was pretty much the only one that was new. There was a made in Mexico lineup of these a few years ago, but these guys are made in Japan and they're way cooler, in my opinion anyways, because you get the reflective Fender logo right there. This one's got that nice faux binding look going on really nicely on this one because they also stain the fretboards a blacker color, but yet they leave the edges that lighter rosewood. So this Telecaster is a fantastic example of that. This Stratocaster kind of naturally had a bit more of a darker board, so you don't get that too much on this. But some nice little wood grains. So these are both available. And here's our second Telecaster. Now the reason why I had to get two of them is because naturally, if you order something from Japan, if they can ship them in pairs of two, it's a little bit cheaper. So unfortunately, the Jazzmasters, they're done. You cannot get the Jazzmasters anymore. So even if you want one, I'm sorry, I cannot get it. But this Telecaster, that's sweet. It's got a little bit of flamed figuring in it. Not a lot, like it's not like this is a super flamed neck, but this is nice. And it's a 2021 version. You remember you get the 75th anniversary of Fender this year for the 2021s. So that kind of makes this one a little bit different. Nice rounded necks on these guys. It doesn't quite have as pronounced of a binding effect though, as like on this other one. So you can choose between your favorite on that. And this one was already pre-sold to somebody that messaged me and asked, hey, can you import me another one? It's like, hey, you're in luck. I happened to just buy another set because these things were so popular. Yeah, this Jazzmaster, I'm definitely glad I kind of lucked out and did the full review and demo on this one. At that point in time, I did not realize that this was like the only brand new one that the Mexican-made version didn't have. So that's why this is the most popular one of the series, because it didn't exist before this one. So I was just hoping that it didn't get broken in shipping. They're expensive to get to the USA, but they are pretty cool once you get them here. All right, let's move on to our last unboxing. And this last one was just a reverb find. The Silverburst market. Yes, we are going to talk about Silverbursts again today. You know, even yet today, people still, you know, poke fun at me for posting Silverbursts for like a week back in October. I mean, come on, guys. We're well over 6 months past that, and I haven't even mentioned Silverburst. A lot of people were saying, I knew this was an April Fool's joke because you didn't have Silverburst as one of your things. It's like, I thought that was kind of funny because in the planning stages, I initially had the back of that guitar be kind of a black and gray color, not necessarily Silverburst. I was thinking more Moonlight Burst, so the top is like the sun, the back is the moon, but I thought it'd be too difficult for Gibson, so I just stuck with 34 Burst on both. Honestly, I don't like Silverburst that much, guys. Like, I love it on a Les Paul Custom, but I would not want to custom order the LP400 in that because I don't think it would look good. The whole idea of the LP400 was, you know, doing a throwback to old vintage arch tops, but within a Les Paul body shape. So inside here, in a gig bag, unfortunately, is a Silverburst Les Paul Custom. But the market is what I want to talk about today. So when the Adam Jones thing started coming out, 3 or 4 months even prior to that, prices started to go way up. Like, you used to be able to get Silverburst Customs like 35, like the very highest for a mint condition one that you would pay would be about 5,000 bucks. And it had gotten to the point where it was anywhere between, you'd be lucky if you could find one for 7, and like the highest would be like 11 to 12,000, and that was just insane. So now that the buzz is kind of dying down, it's hard to tell where the Silverburst market is actually going. However, it has definitely increased more so than it was before. Right now, I'm anticipating that these things will generally sell between like 5.5 to most of them, like the highest about 8,000 is what I would expect someone to pay today. So this one I picked up because I thought it was an okay price. It's definitely got some finish checking. Ooh, wish you would have told me about that. That's just the binding and whatnot, but whatever. As long as we don't have any breaks, cracks, or repairs, I think we're all right. The frets could probably use a little bit of work. I mean, once this is cleaned up, it probably won't be too bad. But this was definitely somebody's player. Looks like I need to add a spring or so. But this is an early 80s one. You can tell because the 3-point adjustment bridge, I think, what is it, 82? But the other reason why I wanted to get a Silverburst in is because the Sweetwater Silverburst replacements have finally came out. So I was really hoping they would get something special on those guys, like a nice written up apology type thing, you know, different than the one that they were just talking about that they sent that they were going to replace it. But what those ones have is right here. They just have Adam Jones sign it, and it says 2021. So unfortunately, that's a little bit of a letdown. I was hoping they would do something even more special than that. But those guys are out there if you're looking for like an ultra collectible version, because that's going to be something that people talk about for years and years to come. Whenever you mention the Adam Jones Silverbursts, they'll always talk about that stolen one. So for the rest of today's episode, I'm just gonna clean this one up, make it as nice as I can. If you'd like to stay around for that, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, we'll catch you tomorrow on the next episode of the Trogly's Guitar Show. Let's go ahead and throw this on the workbench. Okay, so on the workbench, before we do anything, let's assess what we need to do. This obviously needs polished up and cleaned up a bit. It's very dirty. You can tell this has not been cared for a while. So most of this should clean up okay. I mean, we're always going to have these nicks and dings and whatnot on it, though. That's kind of to be expected on an old vintage Silverburst that's definitely seen some use. I'm hoping we can get some of those to come out, though. Looks like we get a little bit of finish checking by the knobs. Not too big of a deal, as long as the knobs themselves are original, which they are. But we've got a little bit of an issue to address here. The pickup ring has been cracked. Now, I probably won't replace it, but I will at least try to put another adjustment spring in there. That way we can level this out or see what's going on. Hopefully the pickups are still original, otherwise I'll be pretty upset. But that is a nice 3-point adjustment bridge. Everything's looking good there. It's looking like our tailpiece has actually been replaced. It's either that or this is just so dirty that it can be cleaned up to kind of match it a little bit better. But what's kind of unique about this ebony fretboard is it has some streaking in it right here, and this will look way better once we condition it. Because right now those frets are like pretty rusty looking. Once we get the frets polished up, I don't think the fret wear will look quite as bad on this particular example. But a level recrown would definitely be worthy of this guitar. Looks like somebody has replaced the nut at one point in time. And then as far as the headstock goes, somebody has locking Spurzl tuners on here. But my initial thought when I purchased this guitar is I could actually restore these back to original Schaller style tuners to kind of clean up the look at the back of the headstock. I can probably get this old shop sticker off since it's mainly been scraped off anyways. And you've got some paint wear chips along there. So I could technically touch some of that up if I wanted to, but I think I'll just experiment with putting original style tuners back on here to see if we can hide some of these paint chips. I mean, there's not much we can do about the side of the neck. Those aren't cracks, that's just where the binding ends and the neck wood begins. So kind of similar story there if you wanted to touch it up or not. It looks a little bit more gnarly on this side. I wish I would have known that purchasing this guitar, but unfortunately the seller did not share photos of that. As far as the edges go, we get Dunlop strap lock buttons. The bottom one is a little bit loose though. But right here is kind of interesting. It looks to me like there was something hot right here because it's actually bubbled up the binding. But it's not brittle or anything, so maybe there was a cigarette butt, put right on here. That almost seems right since it's almost a perfect circle right there. So something happened with that. Thankfully, the guitar doesn't really have a super smoky odor or anything. But overall, after a little bit of TLC, this will be a great Les Paul Custom Silverburst for someone. So let's go ahead and begin our restoration work here. So the good news is we do have the original Tim Shaw PAFs in here. They date to 1982. Fantastic news. We just gotta clean this guy up a little bit and make sure that we get something going on with this pickup ring. I'm not sure why it was missing a spring or whatnot, but I will address that here and get this all cleaned up. I mean, just look at all those gunk layers right there, especially underneath the pickguard. It's always satisfying cleaning underneath a pickguard that hasn't been cleaned under in 40 plus years. Suddenly shines like a mirror. That virtuoso polish always does a great job cleaning these guitars up. So this is what you're going to be left with. It's definitely a little bit of a player's instrument. You can see a little bit of a finished crack right there. You can definitely tell it's not in the wood though, because you can see where it ends right there. But this thing is looking beautiful now. So my final verdict here is yes, the tailpiece has been replaced. You can tell the casting marks are a little bit different than what you'd find in this era. Not a big deal. And this probably originally was one of the cool 82s that had the 9-point adjustment bridge, the posi lock strap buttons. You could just barely see evidence of them because of the grippers right there. And at one point in time, probably had the flip-out winding shawlers that somebody upgraded to the locking spurzels. But hey, the good news is I was able to fix that pickup ring with a little bit of super glue. We're kind of lucky at the location that broke, because if that broke right at the screw, this whole ring would be useless. But since it broke right below it, technically, even if it comes unglued, it would still work just fine. And I only had a gold pickup screw, so I just kind of sanded off the gold of the top. So that'll do quite nicely. Looks like we have a little bit of a gouge from a string right there. All that gunk cleaned off nicely underneath this pickup ring too. You can see the original finish under it. However, unfortunately, I am not getting pickup readings, so that means I either need to clean out the electronics or there's something wrong with the wiring. So yeah, I was not told that the guitar didn't work, so we'll have to do some more investigating there. And now I'm getting readings that don't make sense. So bridge pickup 10.8-ish, our neck pickup about 10. I guess that could mean that they were rewound at one point in time, but I do not see evidence of the pickup covers ever being off. I'll have to do some more investigating. But our fretboard's looking pretty good. You can see some micro cracks right here. They really don't have any effect on the guitar. Just make sure you keep conditioning your fretboard at every string change and you won't have anything to worry about there. If you really hate the look of them, you can fill them in with like a little bit of wood dust, but as far as like the neck falling apart on you, nope, you don't have to worry about that. You can see a little bit of fingernail wear right here, and then up here by the 2nd fret, but other than that, not too bad. So here's the final verdict on the frets. I'm guessing that 2nd fret might cause some buzzing, we'll have to see. Looks like mainly a cowboy chord player on this one. I'd say the first 9 frets or so definitely show wear, but then everything else up here, as far as soloing, not too much. You can definitely see a few of the nibs have chipped off along the side, so if you decided to refret this, you don't have to worry about fret nib retention, you just do it right over that. But the headstock looks great now. Looks like our truss rod's going to be in perfect shape. And it's looking to me like this thing still has a maple neck. 82 is kind of a transition year. That looks like maple to me, but now it's time to do the same for the back. Cleaning the output jack with a little bit of this deoxit stuff, it's strange how the readings are now normal. So our bridge pickup here is 7.33, which is expected, and our neck pickup 7.4. Yeah, interesting how that works out. Alright, on the back, now that it's all cleaned up, you can see all the nicks, dings, and whatnot that has been present on this guitar, but hey, it shines like a mirror again. So, you know, all in all, after a little bit of TLC, this thing really came back to life. It does not look like anything has ever been touched within the control cavity, but strangely enough, both of the securing screws for the ashtray are missing, but thankfully it just stays in place anyways. But these Tim Shaws have never been removed from this guitar. That's great news. Everything's looking okay in our three-way toggle switch as well. The sides look pretty nice and clean now. That area, it's not brittle or anything. I mean, you saw how aggressively I was polishing this guitar, so nothing to worry about, but it is there. I saw kind of a nick at the top of the horn there if you are interested in owning this one. That's good to know about. So just definitely played, but not necessarily abused, I would say. I mean, if you don't mind a few nicks and dings here in the clear coat, some of it goes a little bit further. I think you'll be happy with this one, especially now that it's all shiny. I am happy to say, now that it's been all strung up, I honestly don't notice any fret buzzing, but I did set the action just a little bit higher than I normally would. I didn't really dial it down too much. I'm not that big into setups on the guitars. As long as they play, I'm happy, but that's pretty low as it is right now. It's kind of a bummer that there is some finish chipping here, and that's mainly because the neck has shrank and the binding and the frets have stayed the same, so there's a little bit of a ridge that you can feel. But I decided not to touch these areas up because I guarantee you it would not look good. The treble side of the neck isn't too bad, mainly just this area and a few small places around here, and by the nut. The back of the neck itself actually looks pretty good, just a few dings and some light impressions. And once again, you do have that touch-up area. I decided to touch those top ones up. And I decided to install some original Era Correct Schallers. The only difference between this one and the Gibson version is the style of head they use and the branding on them. But that kind of helped clean this look up. You no longer have those screw holes exposed. Unfortunately, you can still see those chips right there, but this definitely looks a lot cleaner than it was. The other reason why I decided to replace the Spurzels is because this one was missing its locking mechanism, so it's not so good to have a set of tuners when they're all not 100% functional, so I'll just be selling those off separately. I did try to remove the shop sticker residue, and I'm sure something more aggressive could, but the finish has actually not aged under there, so even if you did get that off, you'd still be left with that, so I just let it be. At least that way, there's some sort of an explanation behind it. But no breaks, cracks, or repairs on this guy. The truss rod's good, and the neck appears to be straight. After 3 hours of love, it weighs about 10.5 pounds, 10 pounds, 7.4 ounces, and it's looking like a beautiful vintage beauty. If you're interested in this one, it'll be thrown up on Reverb as well as on my website. So that's it for today's episode. I'll play out a little bit in unprofessional recording just on my GoPro, and we will see you guys tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.